Stuck in a toxic cycle. After losing my mom, I reconnected with my ex but found out he cheated on me twice. Now I am confused about love vita trauma bonding. Is it time to walk away? I have recently been watching videos on YouTube and TikTok of individuals expressing their feelings and seeking advice, and I feel so confused and too embarrassed to ask someone in person, so I am going to ask Reddit instead. Am I the wrong one at 26 years old, female, for believing that I have been trauma bonded to my boyfriend, who is 27 years old, male, and with whom I have been in a relationship for over a year? This will be a lengthy post, so please prepare yourself. I began dating my boyfriend, whom I will refer to as Matt, back in 2021. I met him at his workplace and found him attractive. I asked for his phone number, and we quickly hit it off. However, we did not date for long, only about 3 months, because my job required me to travel, and he was not interested in a long-distance relationship. In 2023, he reached out to me multiple times around his birthday, asking if we could spend time together, and I agreed. I believe he thought it would be an easy evening for him. In reality, I was not considering anything beyond friendship. We hung out for a couple of months, during which time my mother passed away. He was genuinely supportive, and soon after, we became a couple again. My mother died in December, and by mid-January, I began to suspect he was being unfaithful. Whenever I used his phone, he would become very anxious, so I called my sister and asked her how I could look through his phone. Personally, I would rather know what I am facing than live in blissful ignorance. When I brought up the idea of looking at his phone, he stated that if people trust each other, they should not need to go through each other's phones. While I completely agree with that sentiment, since it was the first time I had ever asked, as a partner, you should provide reassurance by showing your phone to demonstrate that there is nothing to hide. He agreed with me, so I asked to see his phone. He handed it over, but when I requested the password, he provided the incorrect one. I instantly realized he was cheating. I laughed it off and asked if he could not remember it. He replied that he had recently changed it but could enter the correct one. I returned the phone to him, but he got up as if he was going to the bathroom, presumably to delete things. I instructed him to leave his phone. When he returned, he entered the password. Little did I know he was deleting things and pretending his password was not working. When I finally got his phone, I immediately went through everything. I checked his Instagram messages, his Snapchat messages, and his text messages, discovering evidence of cheating in every app that allowed messaging. Since all the instances of cheating were essentially intimate text exchanges, they were all through messaging. The initial shock was not overwhelming, but there was one specific message that stood out. It stated that he was helping his gay friend me, who had recently lost her mother and felt like an underpaid therapist. Although I understand that grief is a heavy burden for anyone involved, whether it is the person who has lost someone or the friend supporting them. He had told me not even 2 weeks earlier that he felt I was excluding him from my life because I was not opening up about how I felt regarding my mother's passing. As an older sister, I tend to handle the majority of challenges that arise in my family, so I understand what it means to always be there for someone, and I would never expect that from anyone's sibling, friend, or partner. I would not impose my emotions on anyone, and yes, I was not sharing everything with him until he requested honesty. What I communicated to him did not convey the full extent of my feelings. I merely told him I was tired. The depression made me exhausted. Since we were in public at California Pizza Kitchen, I could not express my frustration because I hold myself to a higher standard, so I waited until we returned to the hotel room that I had paid for. I called each of the women, and they informed me that this is just who he is. He is a cheater and a liar. This is why they never took him seriously, which made me even angrier at everyone involved. How can you fail to take a man seriously while still sending him nude pictures? I asked him if he loved any of them or if he wanted to break up. His answer was no, he loved me, but he did not truly mean it. His lack of self-love drove him to seek validation from women by having them send pictures, and he never returned any photos to show that he did not even like them. I was left in disbelief and utterly disgusted. I did not know how to cope with what I had discovered. We eventually spoke with his mother, who confirmed that he had struggled with self-love since childhood, involving self-harm, needing medication, and attending therapy. Although I understood he was not lying about that, it did not excuse his actions during one of the most challenging periods of my life. If he knew he could not love himself enough to treat me with respect, then he owed it to me to communicate that. It is as simple as that. I then asked him if he was hiding anything else from me. He replied no. Keep this in mind. I gave him fair warning and informed him it would be easier for him to start over with someone else because my trust in him was non-existent, and it is challenging for any relationship to rebuild trust once it has been broken. He claimed he did not care and would do anything to prove how much he loved me. Later in the relationship, after months of attempting to rebuild what was already fragile, I discovered he had cheated on me when we first got together in 2021. In September 2024, he decided to get a new phone, and as everyone knows, with iPhones, when you obtain a new device, everything stored in your iCloud reappears. I use a changing wallpaper for my lock screen, and he requested the same thing, claiming he wanted a rotating image of me and his cat on his screen. When I took his phone to collect all the photos of me and his cat, I noticed nude pictures from a girl saved during the time we were initially dating, and that caused me to explode. I screamed, yelled, and cried. While there will never be pain like the pain I felt when my mother died, the surge of anger and humiliation I experienced in that moment was overwhelming. He stated that he did not inform me about her because it would not have benefited our relationship. What he meant was it would not have helped his reputation, but he had already destroyed that. I did not ask for his help. I asked for the truth, and if he could not provide me with the one thing I requested, then what was I doing in this relationship? He then claimed he told the truth because he was not cheating on me. He was cheating on her with me. They had been dating, and when she moved, instead of breaking up with her, he pretended to be single and began dating me. You may criticize me for judging myself, but I still stayed. I do not know if it was due to a need for companionship during my grief or whether it was truly love. I am unsure if I believed it was love. But I remained, and not only that, we moved in together. I told myself that it was not solely his fault but also mine, as even after he had betrayed my trust, I expressed my willingness to work on the relationship with him. Therefore, I cannot solely blame him. I must take some responsibility as well. A few months after everything settled down, my grandmother passed away, and 1 week later, my father died. We are now starting to have heated arguments again. I honestly do not know whether this is love or if it is a trauma bond. I do not know what I would do if I discovered he cheated on me again, and I also do not believe I can leave him. What is wrong with me? Am I the one in the wrong for not speaking up? Story 2. I hired my best friend as my employee, but our relationship quickly soured due to miscommunication and feelings of disrespect. After a series of awkward confrontations, our friendship ended, and I took him left questioning my leadership and emotional stability. How do I move on from this? I apologize. This will likely be quite lengthy. I understand that this is a story as old as time at this point, but I truly regret hiring my friend. I offered her a position at my workplace, a restaurant, and after discussing it with my manager, we brought her on board a little over 6 months ago, with me serving as her manager. Initially, she performed well, but the first signs of trouble appeared when I provided her with constructive criticism. If something was entered incorrectly, and I pointed it out, it would escalate into a larger issue than necessary, leading to a meeting where we both ended up in tears. After that, everything seemed fine, but there were days when I felt frustrated by how busy we were and the number of corrections or refunds I had to handle, creating a situation where she thought I was upset with her, when that was not the case at all. For instance, I might be shorter than usual and not engage in small talk, prompting her to shut down and assume I was angry with her. These moments were brief, and I usually apologized by the end of the shift to ensure everything was okay. There were also times when I felt she overstepped boundaries and made assumptions regarding my role and responsibilities. If I was engaged in a task, she would immediately presume she should take it over as well. When I would tell her no, she would become upset with me. Essentially, there were numerous communication problems and instances where I felt disrespected as her manager. Fast forward to a little over a month ago when an incident occurred involving a customer and a coworker. I do not wish to delve into too much detail, but essentially, a customer was extremely rude yet ended up being seated instead of removed from the premises. She witnessed one side of the situation, while I observed another, and she argued with me about it and attempted to reprimand my manager. My manager and I have developed a close relationship during my time at the job, and when that incident occurred, I found it disrespectful of her, my friend, to overstep and criticize my manager's decision when she was not involved in the decision-making process. I want to note that she was informed of the situation afterward and admitted that had she seen it unfold, she would not have seated them. Following that incident, tensions never truly subsided. The issue was somewhat resolved between her and my manager, but it did not feel right. Then we arrive at nearly a month ago. I had been going through a difficult time recently, and she began making fun of me about something that happened that day. Initially, I was fine and laughed, but the jokes continued, and I began to feel quite upset by them. I eventually said, "If I were you, and you were making all these jokes about me, I would have quit by now," in a tone that was partly joking and partly serious. I expressed that her comments were truly starting to hurt my feelings, to which she joked, "I'm sorry," while still laughing. I acknowledge I was wrong in my response. I ended up not speaking to her for the remainder of the shift because I was so hurt. My manager noticed this and pulled me aside for a conversation. Throughout the rest of the shift, I remained silent toward her, and I apologized the next day via text. I recognized my behavior was unprofessional, and as a person in a leadership position, I cannot allow my emotions to dictate my actions in that manner. She informed me she would be seeking employment elsewhere, but she did not specify when she would submit her resignation. I acknowledged her statement and left it at that. The following week, she completely ignored me. She was required to report to me regarding her daily tasks, yet she communicated nothing and merely returned to the kitchen. This went on for 3 weeks. Eventually, my manager and I had a meeting with her, during which she was extremely disrespectful to me and effectively implied that she does more work than I do, and that I do not deserve my compensation. I spent most of that meeting in tears due to how hurt I felt. Things did not improve following that encounter, and my manager ended up transferring her to a different position within the restaurant, since she apparently still wanted to work there, despite telling me she did not, and that is where we currently stand. Our friendship has ended. Whenever she needs to speak with me, she nearly yells at me, which is incredibly frustrating because I feel unable to defend myself. I am currently training a new staff member, and conditions are beginning to deteriorate again since this new employee is best friends with the person I am supervising. For the past few weeks, there has been excessive goofing off between them that I have had to address, but I am not observing significant improvement from the new hire. I have felt frustrated and curt again, with multiple customers calling in to report incorrect orders and even having to issue a refund for one of them. I informed her about this, and she became defensive, insisting she had communicated the correct information. There have been other instances where my authority has been challenged, and I did not respond. On another occasion, while speaking with a regular customer, I corrected her about a procedure regarding how something was entered, and she remarked to them that she knows far more than I do. I informed her that we would need to have a discussion the following day, today, regarding her performance and other related matters. Following that, she shut down and failed to engage in any meaningful way. When I instructed her to perform a task in the back, she acknowledged me and then immediately conversed with her friend for a few minutes before completing what I had requested. I texted her after the shift to apologize and reiterate that she was doing a good job, but that I needed to address some of the issues I had observed. She did not respond. I am just so exhausted by everything. I had to call out one day because I was experiencing panic attacks over all of this. I feel as though I am not succeeding in my role as a manager and that nothing I do will be accepted by them. I would like to think of the individuals I manage as my friends, but that complicates the situation since I must also oversee them. It does not help that they are close friends with my former best friend and often socialize with her after work. It is easy to assume that if one of them has an issue with me, they will confide in the others and form a united front against me. I am the oldest of the group, but we are all around the same age. I feel so lost. If I show any emotion other than 100% happiness, I am considered unprofessional. Yet, if any of them are upset with me and choose not to communicate, I am also deemed unprofessional for lacking control over the situation. I am utterly overwhelmed. I hope to be gone by summer. I cannot endure this any longer. I have not been happy in my job for months. I do not even know how to improve this situation. I have tried everything. I suppose I just need to be okay with not caring whether or not they view me as an authoritative figure. But the pain is so intense, and I wish to be finished with all of this. I apologize once more for the lengthy post. I am also using a mobile device, so I apologize if the formatting is odd or if I made any spelling errors. I am utterly exhausted. Story 3. Aita for wanting to invite my abusive dad to my wedding. My boyfriend refuses, saying he can't be around him. I took him trying to maintain family connections despite my complicated feelings. Should my boyfriend understand this complexity or just stay away? This was a situation I had to deal with in a past relationship, and I have been thinking about it recently because we never reached a resolution, and eventually we broke up. I would like to gather some opinions in case a similar situation arises in the future. My previous boyfriend was essentially a very good partner. He was never unkind to me, but I did encounter some issues with him. These issues were relatively harmless, just things that irritated me and made me question whether he was truly the right person for me. However, at certain moments, we were completely in love and were never hesitant to discuss our potential future together. I was raised in a difficult household, particularly due to my father being an abusive alcoholic and a very manipulative individual. My mother ultimately decided to leave him when I was about 16 years old, which was the best decision for our family. While things remained complicated, they undoubtedly improved for my mother, siblings, and me once he was no longer in the picture. Since I have 2 younger siblings, my father still exerted influence over our lives. We continued to meet with him, and he attempted to insert himself into many aspects of our lives. I could elaborate further, but he does love us, and I know that. However, he is also mentally unstable, an addict, and can be a genuinely unpleasant person at times. I was deeply traumatized and affected by my upbringing with him, and I am still in the process of recovering. My ex-boyfriend had an intense dislike for him, more than anyone else in the world. I think that is understandable. He did a lot of terrible things to me and my family, and he was generally a bad person. However, my father was always very friendly towards my boyfriend, and most importantly, I chose to keep my father in my life for several reasons. Firstly, he did not traumatize or abuse me as an adult, and any of his upsetting actions do not significantly affect me because I maintain a distance from him. Secondly, my mother's family is from another country, so my father's family is essentially our only family. We all celebrate Christmas and other occasions together, and I believe that maintaining a peaceful relationship with my father is the best way to ensure these events go as smoothly as possible. Thirdly, my younger siblings have complicated feelings about my dad, and I know that if I were to alienate him, they would feel upset about it. They do not particularly like him either, but they do not enjoy hearing negative remarks made about him. Finally, I also have complex feelings toward my father. He is a challenging person to describe, and I still do not know if I would fully label him as a bad person. However, I must admit that he can be very kind and generous, much kinder than my mother. He is amusing, and under normal circumstances, he can be a joy to be around. Yet, I also have deep-seated hatred for him. It is complicated. In any case, my boyfriend told me that he would not want my father to attend our wedding. This statement led to an argument because I do not even consider that to be an option. His entire family would feel incredibly awkward attending my wedding if my father were not invited. My siblings would surely disapprove and have something to say about it. Furthermore, I would not be surprised if my father showed up anyway, with or without an invitation. I informed my boyfriend that there is no way my father would not be welcome at the wedding, but he reacted angrily, expressing that he feels extremely uncomfortable around him. He argued that I often subject him to this discomfort by making him see my father occasionally, stating that he hates him intensely and other things along those lines. However, I believe he should understand that the situation is much more complex than he perceives. If I am comfortable with my father attending, despite the past abuse and pain he has caused, I do not think it is unreasonable for me to expect my boyfriend to address the fact that his emotions are not the only important factor, and that this situation is not that simple. Yes, in an ideal world, my father would not be there, I do not like him. I do not feel he deserves the title of father of the bride after everything he has done, and I would likely be concerned about him causing a scene while inebriated. However, I feel that my boyfriend is inserting himself into a situation where he does not belong, and in the worst case, he could simply avoid my father at our wedding. It is just one day. I do not know if this is relevant, but he also had a problematic father, not as bad as mine, but still problematic, and his family was able and willing to cut him off years ago. However, there were numerous factors that made that possible, as well as many differences between our circumstances. In summary, am I wrong for standing my ground and rejecting my boyfriend's unrealistic idea that my father should not be invited to our wedding? Brief summary. My boyfriend dislikes my abusive father and does not want him at our wedding, but he fails to understand how complex the situation is. I believe he should simply respect my wishes and avoid my father at the wedding if necessary. Edit. Clarity.